let's go ahead and we're going to do another nerdy review here. And this time I'm going to be covering 8th MS Team. Really excited to do this review. And before I talk about anything about the series, I just want to talk about the story real quick, just to give you a quick synopsis of it. So basically, this series, we follow Shiro Amada and his 8th MS Team as they fight the Zeon on the Earth side. Towards the end of the war, I believe they fight in the Europe, South Asia portions. For the longest time, I thought they fought in South America alongside around Jaburo. I was incredibly wrong about that, and they are fighting actually in the European South Asia front. So that's the story right there. Capsized. So I want to point out some fun things about this series. So this is a 12-episode OVA that also has a compilation movie and a short 10-minute film as well, too. The series originally came out in 1996, a little bit after when Gundam Ring first came out. And I'm going to make some references to Gundam Wing and a bunch of other 90s based series because this really encapsulates a lot of the positives of 90s Gundam series. So, as I mentioned before, 12 episodes, 24 to 26 minutes each. Easily a bite-sized series, but don't make that bite size wrong. It is an incredibly, easily one of the most fun, fast-paced, and action-packed Gundam series out there. It's right up there with G Gundam and Gundam Wing. I would say it's a lot more faster-paced than those two almost. In addition to being a faster-paced too, it actually tells a very nicely tight story as well. A lot of the fighting sequences are a lot of fun to watch. It's not sometimes they can be boring around, but not in the context of Gundam overall. But the fighting sequences here are fun. I think particularly some of the ones I can give examples to that I really, really enjoyed were in episodes 2 and 3 when they're fighting Zaku's in the jungle. The 8th MS Team ambushing a Zeon team, trying to save a rebel village in episode 8, if I'm not mistaken here. And of course, episode 10's fight of Shiro versus Norris. Shiro in his EZ8 Gundam and Norris in his Goof Custom. So those are some really awesome, intense fights. Speaking of fights too, I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the mobile suit and the aesthetic. So this series has a really strong 90s vibe. The look, the tone, the appeal, the storyline itself too. Very much this story reminds me of an action movie spread out into a series. And a well-told action movie, by the way. So that's what I'm saying. It's got this well-woven cast of characters. Nobody that you don't truly dislike. The story is very, very well tightly told, and then the action is right there, hammering it down too. The looks and the aesthetics. I love the designs of the Gundams, basically. Also, a lot of the other suits too. Let me see if I can pull that up here for us. So I can't show that, but a lot of the designs, the Gundam here, or the EZ8. Even some other cooler ones, the Goof Flight type, or Norris's Goof Custom right here too. So there's a lot of really cool mecha designs, redesignings too. I really love a lot of them. Very crisp, very sharp, very detailed too. I mean, if we look at the Goof Custom and we can compare it to older ones, we got a lot of these finer lines, finer details. Just, it's a all to look at. And then when they are live on the screen, it's very, very cool. The dubbing in this series is fantastic. I love the dubbing. Again, this is a series like a bunch of other series, I feel with a lot of the 90s based, not 90s based, but a lot of Gundam series dubbed at this time frame. So you got 8th MS Team, Gundam Wing, G Gundam, the original Gundam, Gundam 0080, 0083. A lot of those Gundams dubbed around that same time frame feature a very strong cast, solid voice acting all around. I feel everybody was pitch perfect for their character and does a great job just expressing everything from the excitements to the horror to the downright intense moments, or even the funnier moments too. I think everybody does a great job. Solid voice acting. I can't can't tout even enough for that. Let me see what else we have here. Again, I mentioned about the characters too. A lot of them are very interesting, well-rounded. Even there's characters some I don't like Mikhail, which I don't like a lot of cowardly-based characters or like whiny ones. Which is funny. A lot of people say like I'm whiny. I'm like I'm not whining. I'm only complaining. You don't want whining, okay? I can show you whining. But Mikhail is an example of a character I did not like. I didn't like him in the beginning, and he slowly progressed to be a better character towards the end of the series. So, like, he's a little bit better. Not by a whole lot, but yeah. That said, though, the only thing I don't like is that Shiro, the main character, kind of tends to be like a Mary Sue of the series. Everyone tends to like him, but it's for, I feel it's valid reasons. Like, his crew like him because of who he is as a commander. Some of the other characters might like him. Even the Federation top officers might like him because of who he is as a character or have other motives too. But I still feel like he's very Mary Sued into the series. Speaking of Mary Sued, Shiro has a lot of this bravado, this attitude that you can find a lot in like action movies almost too. But at the same time, I feel like sometimes that bravado tends to have him have these like character expressions or reactions that seem a little too extreme that take me out of the series a little bit because it's very much very real robot. A lot of this action and stories, it's very tight and very grounded, but like the ground Gundams. But sometimes Shiro's reactions seem to like verge too much towards like to the anime-ish. I mean, it is anime, but like goes too much out there. Like there's a scene in a episode I want to say it was 6 or 7. I want to say it's 7 or so, where Shiro and Aina are in the gulch and they see a Dop and a Skyhopper chasing each other, and they're firing. Skyhopper's firing at the Dop, and the machine gun fire is almost hitting Shiro, and she's like, "Stop it!" And Aina's like tackles him down not to get shot. And I just think it's so silly and stupid and just out like melodramatic, almost like, why are you shouting at two fighter pilots that can't see, they can barely see you and definitely cannot hear you? So I just thought it was just too outrageous at times, a little too much. Speaking of like characters here, I'm getting some like little nitpicks here, but I really do like and enjoy. This is not the first series that does this. I think we got this like from the very beginning with Amuro and Lala, and we kind of see this a little bit more with like in 0080 with Bernie and Chris a little bit, and this one does it a whole lot more with the whole Shiro and Aina. What I'm talking about is that Romeo and Juliet kind of love, the Montagues versus the Capulets, and then you got Romeo and Juliet on each side falling in love and they want to get with each other basically, and that's basically what we have here in 8th MS Team. I actually liked like that kind of a concept. I just feel that the love between Shiro and Aina is too forced. I get that there's that theory of like, hey, they were through some traumatic experience together, and that's how they bonded, and that's where their bond is. I never been through that necessarily, but like all I have to say is like it's a little bit hard pressed for me to believe in it, and I feel like it's too forced, too much. I can believe it to some extent after the fact of the matter, and I liked how it's played out in the episodes, but definitely in the first episode and then episode 6. Yeah, I think it's episode 6 where they're through their extreme moments and they get closer because of that. And I feel it's just too forced at times, but it works out for the most part. Just a small little nitpick here. Speaking of which, too, so there are 12 episodes. 11 of them are primarily like the whole entire main story. The 12 episodes more like an epilogue, and it's basically Kiki and Mikhail trying to find Shiro and Aina. And when we were following them, throughout the first 11 episodes, no discussion about new types whatsoever. No introduction, no nothing. They're trying to keep it short, simple, keep it grounded. Ground Gundam again. Grounded to the realities of the war, mostly with old types. So they may make a joke about like precog, like a small little throw in there. It's like, pebble in the ocean, and that's about it. Nothing else about new types. This last episode, though, does deal with new types, where they find kids who not escaped, but like were saved. how to word it, not saved from the Flanagan Institute, but they came from the Flanagan Institute, which did experiment on new type and new type weapons. We also see these kids having that true new type interconnectivity, kind of like I was talking about earlier on, like with the natural new types. And then more so, a lot of knockbacks to the original Gundam itself too. Primarily in that episode where we see it's raining, and then there's this swan that lands into the river. And that's like knocking right back to Amuro and Lala's first encounter, where Amuro runs into the cabin because it's raining, and then they encounter each other because of the swan. In the last episode, alongside with knocking back towards to the prior series, like the original Mobile Suit Gundam, with the whole swan in the rain and first encounter kind of thing. So I thought that was like a nice little touch to it. It was a lot of fun. One thing I want to last touch on with the series overall that I didn't get to talk about was the music. Really love a lot of the music in this series. The opening and ending themes. The ending was not super great, but the opening theme really just sets the tone and pace for everything you expect in 8th MS Team. I highly recommend, if you've never seen it before, why not definitely just YouTube it real fast, or try to Google the opening sequence for 8th MS Team, and that tells you you're going to be in for a good time watching this series. Alongside too, so the series itself has a spin-off with a compilation movie and a short 10-minute film. I'll start off with the compilation movie first, and then we'll talk about that short film. So the compilation film, which is called Miller's Report, came out in 1998, 2 years after the main series, and it serves more of a connectivity bridge, or like a more cohesion between the episodes of 7 to 8, and it features a lot of footage from episodes 1 and 6, where Shiro and Aina were in their life and death situations. What makes this movie really, really good is that it tells a much more cohesive story, and explains a lot of these, like, what had happened or why is this happening between episodes 7 to 8. Because usually, like, from 7 to 8, it was kind of like this weird streamline where Shiro didn't get, like, a trial or anything like that, and they were already on to the next mission. So this one bridges the gap by explaining a little bit more about Shiro's trial and what came of that, essentially. We get introduced to a brand new character by the name of Alice Miller, and I think it's kind of funny because I could swear when I originally watched this on Cartoon Network when it aired on Toonami decades ago, that they aired Miller's Report alongside with the series. So like as soon as we got to episodes like 6 or so, they aired Miller's Report in portions, and then they aired the remainder of the episodes. It's funny enough because when I have my actual DVD of this one too, when I first purchased, not this one, but when I purchased 8th MS Team, I purchased it on a DVD. I didn't realize was a bootleg. My first foray into bootlegs too. Never even knew about it. And that bootleg had like a play all, and when it played it all, it played Miller's Report movie right in between those episodes. So I always felt like when watching it, it was supposed to be part of it. When I watched it on the Blu-ray released by Right Stuff, though, which is the correct one, the movie is not in there, so it felt incohesive, and I was like, where is this Miller character? I could have swear she was in there. She's an interesting antagonist for Shiro, and I mean, it's not without good reason, though, but I think she just tries to do it in a little bit more of an extreme manner, just like how Shiro tries to go about his own mannerisms, too. Let me see here. So yeah, like the movie Miller's Report gives it a lot more of a cohesion of what had happened during that time period, such as Shiro explaining, because like the series has a really good ideology about like Shiro coming into the war, about like wanting to fight but also wanting to like explore or see things, and then that shifts after meeting Aina, and then it shifts even furthermore with the second encounter with Aina, and he becomes more of this I want to fight this war on my own terms, and I'm going to try and not kill as many people or save as many lives as possible. And when you watch in the series, it's a little kind of like naivete or whatnot, and it's kind of stretched out because, like, you know, everything's told in a very solid story. Like, it's all set in stone for the most part, but it just didn't feel as cohesive. when you watch it in the movie, because they put all the series of events together rather than watching it over a span of several episodes, it makes more sense for Shiro's character overall and why he does what he does. It also gives a little bit more of an argument against towards like the whole federal the court trial, and of course with Miller's character too. It's interesting how she's trying to convert Shiro into things like, oh, you've been swayed by Zeon booty and stuff like that. You need to come back to the Federation, but like. Federation's not as good either, and no, this is love, not a booty call. The other thing I liked about this too is that it also gave a little bit more explanation of how Elidor came back into the team. Last we saw Elidor, I think it was episode 4 when he got shot and he was sent to the hospital, and then he was gone for a few episodes, and he reappears in episode 9 when they're doing the drop into enemy front line. So I thought it was kind of nice to see how they introduced Elidor. And speaking of that enemy drop line too, it explains like how they came across that mission, because between episodes 8 and 9, all of a sudden they were in this mission where they're being dropped from a Medea ship into enemy front lines, not just like advancing. They're literally being dropped into enemy lines. So it's like, wow, what's going on here? And we find out that it's just because, like, after the events of what happened in episode 8 in the compilation of the movie, and Miller's report too, the Federation decides that, Shiro is, he's shown in his loyalties to an extent, but, instead of facing a firing squad, he has a choice of facing a firing squad or going on a suicide mission with his crew. I'm pretty sure we already know what they choose. So that was the interesting one right there, the way they explain that. And so the end of the movie is where the episode begins. I love those kind of things where they do like a prequel kind of a thing, and they build up towards the beginning of the next part, right? Not like this weird cliffhanger stuff that I absolutely hate, where they build on a cliffhanger and then they stop, and then they start or continue on the beginning of the next movie or episode. So they start off with taking off, or they end this movie taking off in a Medea, getting ready to be dropped behind enemy lines. And then the beginning of episode 8 makes much more sense. Or 9, I'm sorry. So that was Miller's report. I honestly think for a compilation movie, it was really well done. It puts things together. I almost feel like you can watch that too by itself and you'd be satisfied with it. It doesn't really disconnect you from the series or anything like that, or you feel like you have to watch the series to get this movie either. So it's really well contained. I think it's a really good companion piece, and I definitely would say if you're going to watch Miller's report, if you could plan it out, unfortunately, I didn't plan that out thoroughly, watch up to episode, 6 or 7. Actually, watch up to 8. Stop there, watch Miller's report, and then continue 9 onward, so you have a lot more of a cohesion. Or you can just watch the movie and kind of skip through the parts that you've already seen, basically. So you can watch the newer scenes, because it does have newer scenes in there. That being said, too, so that was just Miller's report, and I want to talk now onto this even shorter film that came out more than a decade later after the series had completed. Again, series was done and made in 1996. Miller's report came out in 98. There was a short film that was released with the Japanese Blu-ray re-release of 8th MS Team, and they made this short 10-minute film called The Battle of Three Dimensions. The short story, the quick synopsis on that is that Shiro and the 8th MS Team, it takes place between episodes 8 and 9, because Elidor is not there. But we take place between that time frame, and it has Shiro and the 8th MS Team trying to cross a bridge, and they are attacked by a Zeon force. It's kind of nice, though, because it kind of bridges everything. Karen has a little bit of her unlucky streak and gets taken out early, which is kind of funny because that short was only in Japanese. Now, I've only ever watched the Gundams in the dub form, and I really love a lot of the dubbing during this time frame. Really solid dubbing, so I can't truly appreciate the Japanese one as much, but what I do appreciate is that a decade plus later, they actually got majority of the cast of 8th MS Team for the Japanese cast to reprise their roles for this short 10-minute film. The only one that we didn't get to see reprise was Karen. You see her as a character in this little movie, but you don't actually hear her. So I don't know whatever happened to that voice actress. I don't know if she unfortunately passed away or she was too busy and they couldn't get her. Whatever the case, though, we don't get to hear from Karen, but we hear from everybody else. From Shiro, the Sanders, the Mikhail. We get them in this get this little short. That being said, it was a fun one. They call it the Battle of Three Dimensions because we actually get we get reintroduced to a suit that we see in the series, which is a goof flight type, and they say it's battle on three dimensions because there's a battle on land with the damaged Zaku using a Magella top for sniping, and then we had the goof who's using air and the sea to fight against the team. So I think it was kind of a fun little like play on that titling right there. And it was definitely an interesting fight. Really love that we got to see more of that goof flight type. And let me just give you a context of this goof flight type because it is a really cool looking goof. I actually am really enamored with that goof look. Back to the suits, right? So we see in the Battle of the Three Dimensions, we get a goof flight custom. So I'm going to show you an example. Here's a goof custom, though, which is in the series, too, which is Norris's suit. But goofs generally look very similar to this, minus this sophisticated machine gun, because usually it's within their little fingers. And then we get the goof flight type. And you can see, like, it's a much more different, much more, like, robust design. You got the Dom-esque looking legs right here with the jetpack and atmospheric engines right here. Some of the shouldering right there, and then a little bit of the backpack for the binders. So again, it's a cooler look for the goof. And just as I mentioned too, we when it came to episodes 10 and 11, we only see these suits assisting or like flanking alongside with the Apollos 2, never actually conducting any fight. It was in action, but it wasn't truly in action. So that was the one thing I was kind of disappointed, but I was glad to see that the suit was actually fighting in the Battle of the Three Dimensions and doing a lot more, which was really, really cool. Added a very interesting fight, I'll say that much. So one thing I really liked, so another thing I wanted to kind of introduce to this to our nerdy reviews here is favorite suits. Every single Gundam series that gets introduced into the franchise actually introduces a bunch of new suits. So 8th MS Team is no exception to this matter, and actually they have a lot of really cool suit designs. I don't gush a lot about Federation designs or anything because I don't really care for Federation suit designs. But I kind of like some of these designs here. Like, I do like this ground GM. The regular GMs kind of look like skinny and whatnot. I kind of like our bulky designs or whatnot. So I kind of like that. Very reminiscing to our, not that one, our ground Gundams that we see throughout the entire series. Really like this, like the simplistic design. Mostly it's basically a GM body with a Gundam head almost. But it actually is composite of different material. So I really like that. And if I had to choose between, it's sad because like the Zaku designs are not depicted here on MHQ. But if I had to say one of my favorite suits in this series, is definitely going to be Shiro's Easy 8 that he gets episode 9 onward. I really love this design. Comparatively to the ground Gundam, I mean, it's not that bad. I'm showing the GM head. That's Karen's, by the way, after episode 9. I was telling you she has a streak of bad luck. She ended up having to get her head replaced and got a GM head instead. But the Easy 8, I just love the overall design. A lot more bulkier in some portions and aspects. I love how the cockpit is not as much exposed, because this is the cockpit like right here, not as exposed as it is with the Easy 8 right here. And the helmet too, with the little the communication / commander antenna. I think I remember reading a long time ago comments about this suit looking much more like a football player, kind of like Gundam Maxter from G Gundam almost, because you can get these like extra padding here and so forth, a little bit of the shoulders, and then definitely the helmet. So I mean, I thought that was kind of cool. I just like the design overall itself. That's something I really, really liked about this series. Other than that, I mean, I have to give shout-outs to the Goof Custom. Unlike the regular Goof, there's a lot more finer details behind the Goof Custom. And Norris makes this suit super badass in the series. One scene I got to share with you guys, I got to tell, was episode 10, where the 8th MS team is advancing with gun tanks, and they're trying to defend these gun tanks so they can attack the Zeon base. Norris comes out to take out these gun cannons so that the Zanzibar can take off. And when he goes after the second gun cannon, gun tank, and he's facing off with Karen's GM, he sprays the ground, creates all this dust, and she's like, "Where is it? Where is he? Where's that bastard?" And then he comes out of nowhere, like tackling her a little bit, and then no, sorry, he's not tackling. He dusts her, couldn't see her, and then she turns around and she sees this goof right on top of the freaking gun cannon or gun tank with his heat saber, not a heat saber, but this heat saber ready to plunge downward into the the gun tank. Smacks it down, and then we get a close up of this goof sprayed with oil. It's kind of like almost like a warrior stabbing downward onto their enemy and just being sprayed by blood. It's like a cool visceral scene, and it was like one of those like, oh snap moments. And then Norris's goof looks up and is like, yeah, that's right. I was like, oh man, such a cool scene. Also on top of that one too, because goofs we've seen these suits many times, but the goof flight type, again, love the design for this one. Sad we didn't see it do much in the series, and there is a redemption in the short film, The Battle of the Three Dimensions. So I just wanted to point out those suits I actually like the designs for, and some of my favorites in this series here. And as for our very popular segment, I am new to the Gundam franchise. What should I watch first? And this is where I'm going to say, for 8th MS Team, this is the most easiest yes I can say. In fact, I highly recommend watching this series first. It is one of the few Gundams that is like the perfect gateway into the Gundam franchise. I say this in like a twofold, right? The primary is that, yes, it encapsulates a lot of the themes of Gundam, and it keeps it short and simple. But you don't have to watch previous series, past, present, or future, to get into this one here. This one drops you into at the tail end of the war, and we're really morally focused about the 8th MS team themselves, and not so much so as the grand scheme of the war. Yes, we do see side stuff from Zeon and other portions of the Federation, but we're more focused about the 8th MS team and their survival in this war. That being said, too, it is easily the most well-told, evened out story, well edited and paced, and thorough action throughout. There is a even amount of time between the two. I feel like anybody who watches this series would agree with the context that this is like watching an action movie spread out into a series form in 12 episodes. I'll say 11 episodes because the 12th one is an epilogue. I don't count that one. But solid show. Easy to get into the Gundam franchise, and you don't have to be worried about continuity of any other portions. Just jump into this series and have a lot of fun. Highly recommend this as your first watch. So, for the overall, the series is a short OVA series, 12 episodes long, 24 to 26 minutes each. But every single episode seriously packs an awesome punch of 90s real robot action. For everything from well-rounded cast to a revolving story and an intense mecha fighting action, everyone's going to be satisfied coming into this series. Seriously, it's one of the easiest Gundam series to get into and is a perfect gateway into the Gundam franchise overall. I think that the series does have some lackings in some portions, some over dramatic, melodramatic stuff, but honestly, there's nothing truly wrong with this series. I have a hard time trying to really find things I don't like about this series. Easily one of the best pickups for the Gundam franchise, and I would say, and highly recommend, watch this if you haven't already done so. That being said, 8th MS Team gets a solid 4 out of 5. And it's kind of weird, Zaku, why are you saying that you're giving it a 4 out of 5? You were talking all this good stuff with some nitpicks, why you're not giving it a 5? And I'm like, there are some things that I kind of nitpick with this series itself too, and I honestly, for me to give something a 5, it has to be a masterpiece. There are some moments that Shiro kind of grits on me. The pacing is still solid, not get me wrong, and the story is well told. It's not super for a 5. I think if this series was to get a 5 for me, I wish it was a little bit more tighter. I need more from Shira and Aina. Their whole love angle, again, feels way too forced for me. Feels too plotty, and it drives me nuts. Then also, there's a scene where they were supposed to die. I forgot to mention that too. But like, I get irritated when I see plot armor used in such a egregious manner. So someone else who gets shot in this manner dies, but then someone else gets shot in this manner. Like our main character is shot in this manner, they don't die, and I call shenanigans. I think the only thing I had someone else argue with me before in the past that they said that this wasn't plot armor was because they were in the gut. They were in a Gundam, which is different material. But I'm like, I can argue that one, and I can pull up our MHQ for that one here.